Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Ave Maria Press Professional Development Webinar Series. Our goal in this series is to provide parish staff and volunteers and diocesan ministers the formation, training, and tools they need to create vibrant Catholic parishes and growing ministries. In today's webinar, Mike St. Pierre will share 5 strategies for restarting your prayer life, no matter how busy you are. My name is Erin Pierce. I am the Parish and Curriculum Marketing Specialist at Ave Maria Press. Before we begin our webinar, we'd like to recognize our webinar partners, the National Conference for Catechetical Leadership, the National Association of Catholic Family Life Ministers, the National Association for Lay Ministry, and the National Federation for Priests' Councils. Everyone in the audience is muted today, but you are able to ask questions. Questions may be sent to our presenter using the questions section of the GoToWebinar panel, which you can see displayed here. I will read as many of those questions as possible at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to that recording will be sent to you later this week via email. With that, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to our presenter. Mike St. Pierre is Executive Director of the Catholic Campus Ministry Association. He has more than 20 years of experience in parishes and schools and with nonprofit organizations as a teacher, campus minister, department chairman, youth minister, dean of students, and president. His work has been featured on numerous podcasts, publications, and on radio, and he has recently authored a book with Ave Maria Press titled The 5 Habits of Prayerful People. Mike, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to go ahead and give you the reins here and come back on when you are all done.
Okay. Okay, so thank you very much, Erin, for giving me the opportunity to be with you all today. And I'm coming to you from New Jersey, and we finally hit spring here. So when it gets to 40 degrees in New Jersey, people get into shorts and t-shirts, and it's kind of an exciting and sad time of year. So thank you for having me. Erin, I wonder, can we invite people
Yes.
to enter into the chat, responding to a couple questions?
I believe so. So you see on the panel there, if you go to the chat, open that up.
Great. So let's try this, everyone. What we want to invite you to do is just to enter into the chat the state that you're calling in from today, or you're listening in from, or you're on your computer from. So if you can put that into the chat, that would be wonderful, just so we can start to get a sense. There's over 50 of you on the call right now. Get a little sense of where people are coming from. Okay. So as those start to come in, again, we invite you to, in the chat, just write the state that you're listening from today, and that gives us a sense of how many people are on and exactly where you're dialing in from. As you're doing that, I'll now share my screen and begin our presentation. So as Erin mentioned, I did write this book called The 5 Habits of Prayerful People, and I'd like to share with you some of the basic concepts of this book, but also I have 9 micro strategies for how you can expand and improve your own life of prayer. Wherever you are today, the hope is that you would leave this webinar with some very practical strategies for how God can take your prayer life to the next level. So just kind of start with, if I were to ask each of you a question, and what would be your response? In terms of your average day, let's say it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday, and it's just sort of a regular day in the week, whatever month you're thinking of, how many minutes a day would you spend in prayer? Would it be 1 to 4 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, 11 to 30 minutes, more than 30 minutes for you overachievers out there in terms of prayer? Where would you put yourself in that? Do you find that you're just sort of nibbling around the edges of your prayer life, or you're really taking time to sit and be with the Lord in prayer? And I start this presentation with that question because a lot of us, if we're honest, we wing it in terms of prayer. And we're not always sure about if we're doing it properly, if we're doing it right, if we're praying enough. And so with that said, let me tell you a little bit more about me. As Aaron mentioned, I'm the executive director of a nonprofit called the Catholic Campus Ministry Association. And I have the great privilege of serving over 600 Catholic campus ministers on over 300 campuses. The need for Catholic campus ministry has never been greater. And so it's a great privilege and opportunity that I have. There's the cover of the book on the left. It's a wonderful cover from Ave. They have done just a terrific job in terms of getting this book into so many hands of so many people. In addition to being a writer and executive director, I also have a YouTube channel called Praying Well, where I review apps, I give brief tutorials on prayer, all kinds of things. I'm a public speaker. But beyond that, my favorite place to be is probably in the front row of my daughter's spring musical, or hang out with my wife and the rest of our kids, or you might even hear the writing mascot for this book, my favorite dog, and his name is Ace. I should also just give a little apology in advance. If you hear barking at some point or another, please do your best to put a smile on and ignore it. My dog is most of the time well-behaved and occasionally awful. So we're hoping it's going to be the former today. So this book starts with actually a car accident, not one that I was in, but a few years ago, I was on my way into work. I was coming off of a major interstate, and it was a little jug handle, little turnoff. I start decelerating, and I see on the other side of the road, there's this car, and it's overturned, and the wheels are spinning, and there's smoke, and there's all kinds of stuff. So for me, the adrenaline starts pumping. Bear in mind, this doesn't happen to me all the time. The adrenaline starts pumping. I park my car off to the side. I put my flashers on, and I start running towards this overturned car. I'm dialing 911 with my phone. It's very spy-like, right? And I get closer to the vehicle, and I see that there are two people trapped inside the car. The car's upside down. So I've never been in this situation before, so I just kind of went with my gut, went with my instinct. I climbed up the side of the car, and I peered in. And I was a minor in college in Spanish, I should mention to you, and I realized in this situation that they spoke Spanish. So I tried to say to these two people who are in this overturned car, desperately trying to escape, I tried to say, "Don't worry, the police are coming." And I got part of that right. I said, "No te preocupes, la policía está comiendo." And instead of saying, "Don't worry, the police are coming," I said, "Don't worry, the police are eating." And they looked up at me from inside this car, and they thought, this is the guy who's going to rescue us. He can't even speak properly here. And what in the world are the police eating, right? Why do I mention that silly story? I share it with you because prayer is very similar to this. Not that you're going to have an overturned car, perhaps, but that it's an attempt to do something good and do it usually imperfectly. And at least in my life, in my experience, that's how the saints become holy. They keep trying different things and they do them imperfectly. They stumble, they bumble, but they keep trying. And that's really one of the secrets of prayer. With that said, many of us scratch our head when it comes to prayer. We're not sure if we're doing it properly, and we don't talk about it very much. It's kind of like physical fitness or personal finances. We don't typically talk about those kinds of things with other people. Same with prayer. And that's not so good because many times we feel like we have to wing it or do it on our own. But prayer is like a habit. It's like a routine that you might see in other parts of your life, like commuting or lifting weights or brushing your teeth. I brush my teeth with my right hand every single day. For 44 years, I've been doing that. I never have a moment where I say, maybe I should brush with my left hand today. And you probably are the same way. Prayer for many of us is something that we just don't think about very often. It's a habit and a routine. But you might know that many of the things we do in our day, some people actually indicate up to 40% of our day is done unconsciously. We're not even thinking about it. Have you ever had one of those moments where you got to work and then you said to yourself, oh my gosh, I don't even remember. Was there traffic today? How did I get here? That's how a lot of our day goes. So when it comes to prayer, prayer is a habit or a routine that I would say, what if it could be different? What if our faith habits and our prayer life could be intentional? What if we could put some design or some engineering, if you want to think of it that way, behind it? You know, this guy is the most famous Olympian in American history, probably in global history, by the name of Michael Phelps. And Michael Phelps, an incredible swimmer, just an amazing human being, an amazing athlete. And you might say, well, he was a great Olympian because he's tall and he has no body fat and he loves to swim and it always came easy to him. And all those are probably true. But what really made the difference in Michael Phelps' career and in his profession was he had coaching, which taught him over time to take certain routines and rituals before practice, before a meet, before a big competition, and do them the same way every single time. So he became religious about which foot would go up on the platform first, which earbud would go into which ear first, which song would play 30 minutes before his race. What would he be thinking about 10 minutes before his race? So that seems perhaps a little bit obsessive, but I guess you don't get to become the most significant Olympian in history without being a little bit maniacal. I share that with you because our prayer routines and rituals could benefit from a little bit more design and intentionality. And our routines are more important than we realize. Wouldn't you agree? Think about for children, put your hat on, zip up your coat, put your shoes on. Kids know the value of routines, and I suspect it's no different for you and for me. Certainly that brings us to a conversation of our faith routines, and our faith routines are the most important routines of our lives. I mean, think about a Sunday where you didn't go to mass and what kind of an impact that would have on the rest of your day. Sure, you'd have an hour and a half to 2 hours extra time, but I think it's fair to say your day wouldn't be the same and your faith would be less as a result of not having that Sunday routine. So our faith routines are of the utmost importance. I would invite us all to be a little bit more intentional when it comes to the routine of our prayer life. And by being more intentional, dramatic results can come from that. Let me give you some examples. Okay, so imagine instead of rushing to Mass, which probably all of us can relate to on some level, you might get to Mass 10 minutes early and not have to feel stressed. And so you're going to be more likely to appreciate the music. You're probably more likely to get a better seat. Don't sit in the back all the time like a lot of Catholics do. You're more likely to appreciate the homily. How about this? Instead of feeling guilty about your prayer life, imagine having real confidence when you approach God every day in prayer. Wouldn't that be awesome to just approach God with a smile on your face and a sense of gratitude in your heart? How about instead of wondering if you're praying enough, enjoying the progress that God is doing in your life? How about instead of trying harder in terms of your prayer life, building what I call spiritual momentum? Last but not least, how about instead of going through the motions of whatever it is, whether it's praying the rosary or the Divine Mercy, chaplet, or adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, imagine really enjoying, savoring those moments of prayer. All of that is possible with a little bit of intentionality. And isn't it true that we live in a very unique time? I appreciate this quote from Archbishop Chaput in Philadelphia. He says, "We live in a country very different from that of the past. People who hold a classic understanding of sexuality, marriage, and family have gone in just 20 years from pillars of mainstream conviction to the media equivalent of racists and bigots." If you start investing more time and energy into your daily life of prayer, you're going to stand out. because the way you spend your time is going to be different. And guess what? The moments you put into your prayer are going to spill over into other parts of your everyday life. And that's really the goal of this, isn't it? Can I ask you for a moment to fill in the blank? And you're welcome to do it in the chat on the right side of your screen where it says chat, or you're welcome to just write it down wherever you are. But what would you fill in the blank here? I'm to what? To pray. And I'll put one in here myself. This is one that I hear a lot. People tell me they feel too busy to pray. How about for you? What would you say? What would you put into that line there? I'm too what to pray? Too nervous to pray? Too anxious to pray? Too stressed to pray? I'm too unconfident to pray. What would you put in there? Again, just welcome to put your comments into the chat there. What if we could switch the narrative? And instead of saying, I'm too whatever to pray, what if you built an attitude that said, I'm too blessed not to pray? I have so many reasons for gratitude in my life that I can't imagine not starting my day with daily prayer. I can't imagine going to sleep at night without saying thanks to God. Wouldn't that be awesome? Instead of, oh, I'm too this or that to pray, going to, I'm so blessed I can't not pray. I just have to. With that said, there are some challenges to praying. Some would say, I just don't see the results. Others would say, I'm so scared of silence. It's awful. It's terrifying to me. Others would say, no one ever taught me to pray. By the way, I can certainly relate to that. It's boring. I don't know what to do. I'm an extrovert. And let me just say this, that I am an introvert. And so for me, I enjoy time alone. I enjoy time by myself. But God, in his infinite wisdom and sense of humor, brought me the most amazing woman to marry 20 years ago, my wife, Pierre. She's an extrovert. And so all of this applies, this prayer counsel, it applies to introverts like me or to extroverts like my wife, Carrie. You might also say one of the challenges to praying is this little creature, the smartphone. Isn't it amazing? We didn't even have these 10 years ago. And today, when you go out to a restaurant, you see everyone and their brother on their smartphones. It's very distracting. And for many of us, when we get to a moment of silence or just being restful in God's presence, what do? We want to reach for our phone. So just having this makes prayer a little bit more difficult. I interviewed this professor from Christendom College a couple of months ago, John Cuddeback, and he said this. He says, technology is a problem that threatens our very humanity. And I said, John, you don't really mean that. And he said, he really means it. Not that he doesn't use technology. He just means that if we're totally into our phones and our tablets and our devices, it takes a little piece of our humanity away from us. With all of that, I really do believe that there's no better time than right now to be a person of prayer. I really mean that. There's no better time than right now to invest in your daily life of prayer. It's an amazing time, and the church needs you. The church needs me. Does the church need us to speak up? Sure it does. Does the church need us to be active participants in our parishes? You bet. But the church also needs us to be saints, and the church needs us to be spending as much time as we can in prayer so that others can benefit from that. What do we know about prayer? Well, Jesus says, be brief. We know that Jesus himself modeled prayer when he went off on his own late at night or early in the morning. We know that the Catechism has a whole section on prayer, and it starts with this beautiful quote from St. Therese of Lisieux, the Little Flower. And she says, prayer is a surge of the heart. It's a glance towards heaven. You notice Therese does not say it's having the perfect words. Rather, it's a surge of the heart. We know from the saints that many of the saints spent a lot of time in prayer, and often they describe it as an intimate connection with God. Teresa of Avila says prayer is just being with the one who loves you. Henry Nouwen says prayer is just responding to God's pursuit of us that's already been taking place. And I will also say that we know a lot about prayer from our own experience, our own personal intuition. And we should trust that because God places certain kernels of wisdom inside each one of us. We also know that certain prayers that probably are very familiar to us as Catholics hold a certain place of primacy, if you will. Thomas Aquinas says that the Our Father, the Lord's Prayer, should have a very special role in our life of prayer. I like this. He says that it holds a chief place, has these wonderful qualities. It should be confident, ordered, and suitable, and devout and humble. Think about your own prayer life. Do you feel confident? Do you have a sense that your prayer kind of fits right? Or are you always praying to win the lottery? Do you have a sense of being devout? You know, that when you approach God, you have a sense that God, you're God and I'm not. I'm grateful for this relationship and I know you're madly in love with me, but I know I'm still a sinner. And that's also part of being humble. Aaron, let me just pause for a second and see. Let me come
Sure,
up for air, take a little breath, a little
sure.
sip of water, and see also if anybody has any questions.
Are you seeing anything in the chat box, Mike?
I'm not, Aaron.
Okay, I think maybe the settings have that turned off, but people have been responding to your questions.
Great.
Um, we've got people from all over East Lansing, Michigan, Akron, Ohio, California, Illinois, Texas, Wisconsin, Oregon, Indiana, Maryland, um, Pennsylvania, Houston, Texas, New Orleans.
Beautiful.
Um, yeah, and in response to the question about I'm too blank to pray,
Mm-hmm.
we've had some I'm too tired,
Mm,
overwhelmed, distracted, busy, um, and unworthy.
mm.
Hmm.
Wow, that's a profound one.
Hmm.
Thank you all for that. Those are fantastic.
Yes.
Someone asked me recently. They said, "What makes a good prayer?" And typically, what I say is an honest prayer. And so, for any of you, put those in the chat. You know, overwhelmed, busy, unconfident. Um, that's really good stuff. You ought to pay attention to that because God knows exactly how we feel when we pray. He knows how you're coming to the Lord each day, whether you're kind of dragging yourself to prayer or whether you're feeling like, yes, I really want to do this. God knows that and He honors that. And to some degree, I'm sure God loves that. So thank you all for being honest on that. How do you know if you're praying well? How do you know if you're quote unquote doing a good job when it comes to prayer? That's a great question. And I like to think of it in terms of being a ladder. And again, think of where do you see yourself in this ladder? I work with a lot of young people, and many of them will say, prayer just isn't a part of my life. It's just God's irrelevant to me, you know. Others would say, well, I pray when I go to mass. That's kind of the container which holds my prayers. Others will say, well, I pray before a meal. And if you're, you know, you have a sense of outreach, you might even make the sign of the cross when you're in public and you're having making a prayer before a meal. Others would say, before my day ends, you know, I'll pray the Our Father. I have just a brief little moment of prayer there that kind of puts a nice bookend to my day. Others will say, you know, I try to kind of integrate prayer into the busy parts of my day when I'm folding the laundry, when I'm on my way into work, when I'm walking the dog. These are all actually wonderful moments and opportunities for prayer. Others will say, well, I try to get to Adoration of the Blessed Sacrament once a week. I make a visit. Beautiful expression. I make a visit. I love that. And others will say, in addition to living a sacramental life, I have a healthy, consistent time for daily prayer. So, what are we about? We're about prayers, saying prayers, and just as much, maybe even more than that, we're about a sense of prayerfulness. You know, this idea, as Dr. Robert Wicks calls it, that my day becomes pointed with marks of prayer. It becomes saturated with spots of prayer. Think about when you were in love, you know, and hopefully you still are at this point. Um, you can't help but think of the other person, right? You're thinking of them all the time and it puts a smile on your face. I think that's what God wants for our life of prayer, that we're thinking of God regularly during the day. We're talking to God regularly during the day. And it's like joy, you know, what's that phrase? If you're happy and you know it, inform your face. You know, a really joyful person, you just see it. in their smile, and typically they're a really prayerful person. So I'm not going to spoil all of the surprise for you, but these are the habits that are mentioned in the book. And thank you, Ave Maria, for giving us the gift of alliteration. But this gift of passion and pursuit, this is a habit which is essentially one that is intentional. It's a habit which is in response to God. The second habit is that of presence, showing up and decreasing distractions. And I want to ask you a question about that in the chat in just a second. The third habit is one of preparation and planning. So this idea that I can contribute to the efficacy of my prayer, that I can pray well. I can be a better prayer with some practice and some work. Fourth is persistence and perseverance, sometimes called grit or resiliency. And then the last one is pondering or reflection. So what I'd like to invite you to do, even though I can't see your chat, but Aaron can, thanks be to God, related to the habit of presence, what do you find distracting when it comes to prayer? I invite you to put that into the chat right now. What is distracting? What makes it so hard to focus when you pray? And I know for me, one of the things would be noise. I typically try to pray in my home office down in the basement, and guess what's happening at the exact same time? My kids, who I love, are getting their lunch ready for the day, and they're having breakfast, and dishes are clinking and that sort of thing. All good stuff and a little distracting. So what would you put in the chat box right now that you find distracting when it comes to prayer? We'll just pause for a second.
We've already got some things coming in here. Things going through my mind, my thoughts and schedules, the mind I can't turn off, shutting my mind off, thoughts that come into my mind about what I need to do, intrusive thoughts and imagination, making lists of things that I need to do. You're a list guy. Events of the workday, daily concerns, other people or interruptions, definitely noise and the noise in my head, thinking about my to-do list, thinking about things I need to do, again, to-do list, ditto, people in my environment, to-do list, thinking about all the things around the house that need to be done, outside interruptions, thinking about things I need to do. It seems like there's a common theme here.
Well, that's great. I can relate to all of those, and I am a strange list maker myself. And if you get your hands on the book, we talk about list making actually in the 5 Habits of Prayerful People. So those are great. Thank you all for those. What I'd like to do is give you an image of these 5 habits. And the image, I have sort of 2 pictures here. The one is on the left of 2 football players, and the one is the right of somebody who I presume is baking bread or making some kind of dough. The 5 habits are basically like basic skills that allow you to pray well. So sometimes we say that's like the blocking and tackling of football. These are the basic skills. Or making dough, that's a basic skill that everyone who's a good cook kind of just knows how to do. And these 5 habits give you this set of basic skills which really allow God to help you turn back those distractions, the noise in your head, the to-do list, thinking about your day, stresses, your schedule, all of that. These habits do help you with that. With that said, what I'd like to do, because I want to give you some quick wins today, rather than go real deep, a mile deep on these 5 habits, I'd actually like to give you 9 micro strategies for your everyday prayer life that I think you could actually put quite a few of these into practice this week. So if that's okay with you all, so that's the only plan I have, I'd like to go into these 9 micro strategies. Again, if the 5 habits are kind of the basic important skills, these are now the tactical strategies that you can use to boost your prayer life. So the first one is to get to daily mass once during the week. Jason Everett, who's a speaker that I love, he says, daily mass is for those who have nothing better to do. And when I first heard him say that, I was like, what? What are you talking about? But what he means is when you go to mass, whether it's Sunday mass or daily mass, you literally have nothing better to do. You know, what could be better than celebrating the Eucharist, being with the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament? I mean, that's amazing. So that's one thing. And why do I say just try to get to mass once during the week? Because if you can be faithful to something small, God will take it far. The second one is to take 10 minutes for spiritual reading before you go to bed. At the end of the book, I give 3 lists of prayer resources, and Father Ron Rolheiser's book, Prayer, Our Deepest Longing, it's one of the resources that I give. There's something about an old-fashioned book that you can dog-ear the pages and you can write in and you can feel it. There's just something powerful about that. Your eye's not on a glowing screen right before bed. It's very, very powerful, and it's a way to augment your prayer life. Something theological, something that's inspiring. If you can find a book on prayer like Father Ron Rolheiser's, great, but it could even just be faith related. That can be a very powerful aspect of prayer. The third one, find a spiritual director. I mentioned my spiritual director, Father Terry, in the book, and I've been so blessed to have the same priest for probably 8 or 9 years now. And yes, I am giving him a free version of the book. But I meet with them once a month, and I do come in with a list because I'm kind of nerdy that way. And I just talk about what I feel like God's been doing in my life, or I'll ask him for his advice or his counsel on something. And if you've never had a spiritual director, this will single-handedly take your prayer life to the next level, I promise you. Finding one, look for your local retreat house, ask your local pastor, ask somebody that you know, who would be a good spiritual director for me. Typically, these are people who are well trained, they're good listeners, they have a deep, rich interior life, and they love just coming alongside people as spiritual directors. Number 4 is not easy, unplugging from your technology once a week. There's a brand new book that I recommend called Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. He's a Georgetown professor, Choosing a Focused Life in a Noisy World. It's got a number of wonderful strategies to help you turn off your devices once a week. Try it. I started doing this a couple of years ago on Sundays, and it is not easy. I try to cheat. I try to sneak glances at my text messages and things like that. What I found is I just learn to rest more. I'm more present to my wife and my kids when I'm not constantly checking my phone. So that's your 4th strategy. Number 5, to create a prayer corner. That's my dog Ace, and that's the prayer corner that I use most mornings. It's down here in my office. And maybe you have a special cross, an icon, a little plant, a crucifix, a Bible, whatever it might be. Maybe it's just a corner in your living room. Maybe it's a spot out on the porch. But let that be holy ground for you. I mean, yes, God is everywhere, but there are certain places that we do feel closer to God. And so I would invite you to consider a prayer corner in your home, in a place that you can pray. Number 6, these are not easy, by the way. Aaron, I feel like I should have given our attendees some easier wins here, but each one is harder than the next. Number 6 is to try 5 minutes of silence per day. Now, I know some of you are saying, well, that's not that difficult. Trying 5 minutes of silence, I mean, how hard can that be? However, try it. Try just sitting there, no device, nothing. And you'll find the noise in your head is deafening, but over time, you'll probably find, like Mother Teresa of Calcutta, that God really is the friend of silence, that silence is a beautiful thing. Thomas Merton said, God is present in all of the silences of the world. So we don't need to be afraid of silence. Even though it's awkward and a little scary, it can be a container of loving relationship with God. Oh, this is easy. Okay, number 7, change your smartphone wallpaper. We're probably turning our phone on dozens of times per day. Why not have a little Bible passage or a little reminder that says, did you pray today? This is an easy one, which could pay immediate dividends. Number 8 is schedule in adoration once during the week. I love this quote from St. John Paul II. From the Eucharist comes strength to live the Christian life and zeal to share that life with others. Number 9 is the easiest method for prayer that I've ever learned. And it's one that I actually use probably 6, if not 7 days every single week. And it's called the ACTS method of prayer. I know I'm preaching to the choir. You probably already use this. It's a wonderful formula for prayer. A is for adoration, telling God, God, you're so amazing. You're awesome. C is for confession, not in the formal sacramental use of the word, but a moment of reflection to say, God, I wasn't at my best yesterday. God, I messed up yesterday. I fell short. I sinned there, and I want to ask for your forgiveness. T is thanksgiving. God, thank you so much for all of these different blessings in my life, and be specific with those. And then S is for supplication, just a fancy word for praying for the needs of other people. I actually have a series of YouTube videos just on this particular method of prayer. So after the webinar today over your Easter break, check them out because like a nerd, like a geek, I actually pray these on YouTube to try to model how it works in my own life. If nothing else, respect your prayer routine. Come to enjoy your prayer routine and build a morning. If you're a night owl, fine, but most of us are morning people. Build a morning routine that works for you, and don't be afraid to speak up, to literally talk out loud to God. It's going to feel very awkward at first, and I know for a lot of Catholics it's not in our comfort zone, but try it. Every relationship we have, we talk out loud. Even if you go to a concert or a football game, you scream. You scream at the ref or your best players. And certainly for people in our family, our friends, those we care about, we speak to them. So why wouldn't we speak out loud to God? One closing thought, Aaron, and then maybe we'll open it up for questions. This is a photo taken in 1986. And they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that is certainly true in this case. Take a look for a second. It's a photo taken in Paris. And I love this young man on the left. He looks like he's about 12 or 13. Look at his right hand. It's kind of stiff, kind of nervous. Look at his facial expression. He's just like, oh man, what's going on here? And then you see the man to his left, the strong arm around him saying everything's okay. And look at the grin on his face. You know, it's just like, I love being in this situation. Well, I love this photo because I would just love it even if I didn't know the people in it. But I especially love it because I'm the nerdy kid in the red pants, and that's my dad right next to me. And not only is my father one of my spiritual role models, but I actually think that there's a little prayer metaphor in this, that we are standing in a busy world at the intersection of our lives, and we're not sure if we're doing it right. And God is right there standing next to us with a big grin on his face saying, you got this, you can do this, and you can be a person of deep prayer. So I'm going to pause right there and just say thank you. That is my website there, MikeSt.Pierre/book. I do have a series of bonus items and resources for you when you purchase the book. But Aaron, I'm wondering if we can take some questions or some comments. And I'm so appreciative, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Questions either about prayer, about the book, about your own spiritual journey. Don't be bashful. Either send it right to Aaron or put it in the chat, and maybe Aaron, you could facilitate that.
I sure will. I sure will. I'm going to go ahead and change the presenter again. And you all can see, I think they already know where the question box is.
Great.
Thank you so much, Mike. Your genuineness really comes through with this, and the 9 strategies are really so many practical things that we can really do. As you started these in your own life, can you give us a sense of when it became more comfortable, kind of habit for you?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I would say one thing is I've been very much influenced by people around me. You know, so I remember in college, people would make a holy hour, and that was sort of the cool thing to do. And so I started making a holy hour. I don't think if I had if I didn't have their influence, I don't know if I would have been able to do that. So there is something to be said for the context in which you're in. I think for me, I like mornings a lot. That probably took a couple of years, post college, to just understand that setting the table for my day was really important, and just a quiet couple of moments in the morning made a huge difference. Um, those are a couple of quick thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, we've got Deborah here. She says, I know spiritual directors are trained, but I'm so torn in getting one because if we open ourselves to God and listen for Him to answer us, then aren't we distrusting God's answers if we are going to a human mind for direction?
Hmm. Well, that's a great question. I think if we're honest, we listen to wise people often. Uh, I, I watch TV, or I binge watch Netflix, shows. So I listen to unwise people a lot of times when I do that. But I think on the flip side, there is something innate in us about seeking wisdom and seeking truth. And when another person can be God's vehicle for wisdom and truth, I think there's something really profound about that that can really help us. So I think as long as the person is very holy and well trained, that they could give you a word of insight and wisdom and counsel and comfort and affirmation. And I would say if you haven't tried it, seek a spiritual director out. And if it's not the right fit, it's okay to say, I don't think this is the right fit. I don't think this is working. Thanks for your time. It's been great meeting you.
Mhm.
I'm going to find someone else. I've certainly done that. I mean, God's been merciful. I've had the same spiritual director for a long time now, but I went through a string of priest directors for a number of years who they just weren't the right fit.
Mhm.
And so if you want to think of it similar to like speed dating, I mean, a good spiritual director doesn't take it personally. They know if this isn't the right fit. I mean, a great director, they are not about themselves. They're only about you.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you. Another Deborah. It seems like when I try to pray, Satan sends bombardment with people, things to distract me. Is it meant to shut yourself away to find that silent spot where you can be open to God only? Or is it mean to shut yourself away to find that silent spot where you can be open to God only?
Mm, wow, these are wonderful questions. I don't know if our third question will be from a Deborah, but no, thank you for that question. I mean, here's the thing. The saints talk a lot about the discernment of spirits, and there are times when Satan sends things to distract us or tempt us. I do believe that. I also believe that we can generate plenty of mental clutter on our own side. And I'm not smart enough to know, is that from the devil, or is that just my own distracted, information overloaded brain? I hope it's the latter. But so I will just say that there's a certain sense I would invite you to pray through. Is this from the devil, or is this just my own? I just watched a TV show and then that carries over and I think about it half an hour later. I think probably many times that's what that is.
Mhm.
In terms of finding a quiet space, you have to be selfish when it comes to your daily life of prayer. No one will call you and say, go take 15 minutes to pray. You know, no one will wake up and say, Aaron, make sure today you get to the Blessed Sacrament. No one's going to do it. Okay. I mean, maybe you have a best friend, but they'll only do it for a season and then their life will get busy. You have to be the one who's kind of selfish with that. It's like physical fitness. There's no one who's going to drag you out of bed and get you on the treadmill. You have to do it. And I think we see it in Jesus. Jesus did it. If it was good enough for the Lord to get away for some quiet, then I think we should give ourselves permission to do that too.
Absolutely. Somebody mentioned that that's when they do much of their prayer time is when they're on the treadmill.
Why not? Or during your commute in the morning, or when you have a
Exactly.
quiet, when you're cutting the grass. I mean, you're preparing dinner. These are
Mhm.
great moments. I mean, Saint Teresa of Avila said, God is as much to be found in the washing of pots and pans in the kitchen as
Mhm.
he is in other things. So He's right there.
Great. From Stephen, could distractions in prayer be the Holy Spirit telling us what we need to pray about?
Hmm. Well, okay, so I come at this from the sense of a clear mind is better able to focus on the Lord. So I'll just tell you what I do. And if my dog barks in a moment, I apologize just because people are coming home and he might get distracted. Um, so when I'm trying to pray and I get a distraction, I typically will try to let it go. Imagine you're sitting on a beach and you see that boat going by. You see the person parasailing or the person jet skiing. You have two choices. You can either swim out to hang out with them or you can let them go, right? And so when it comes to your prayer life, let the thought go. Acknowledge it, let it go. With that said, if it, sorry, with
No
that
problem.
said, if the thought doesn't pass you by and it persists, it's okay to take out a little piece of paper and jot it down. Get it out of your head. If the context is appropriate, take out your phone, take a note, turn it off, and put it away. Usually that's enough to kind of clear your head and then return back to the Lord.
Great. Thank you. All right. Um, Personally, which of the micro strategies did you find most difficult?
Definitely the unplugging from technology on Sundays.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the hardest. And I didn't want to do it. I went kicking and screaming. I don't think anybody suggested it. I just felt like I needed a break. I needed a break from Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and CNN. And I even needed a break from Catholic news. I just found I was working so hard to keep up with the latest news, and then I would try to strategize, well, what should the church do and what should I do and how can I help and all that. It was exhausting. And so for me, that was the most difficult. And it still is difficult because I fully acknowledge that, if you place before me a Bible and an iPhone, I want that iPhone every day of the week. I know the Bible's better for me and I know it has implications on my salvation, but I'm human and I acknowledge I'm tempted to just do dopey things on that iPhone, checking my pictures or sending email or whatever. So that one is not easy, but if you try it, I promise you will see in probably just 2 weeks, you'll go into Sunday night feeling so chill, so relaxed, and you'll really appreciate what real deep Sabbath is.
Mm, that's beautiful. All right. Well, it looks like the questions here have concluded, so we will go ahead and move forward. Here we go. We did want to offer all of you a special promotion on Mike's book, 20% off using webinar 0416, which is for today's date, and that expires on the 26th. So thank you so much, Mike, for sharing your wisdom, your expertise with us, and for everybody who participated in the webinar and sending in questions to us. We would once again like to thank our webinar partners. Um, the National Conference for Catechetical Leadership, the National Association of Catholic Family Life Ministers, the National Association for Lay Ministry, and the National Federation of Priest Councils. If you're not familiar with any of these organizations, please check out their websites, which are displayed here on the screen. This webinar, as all of our past webinar recordings, appear on YouTube, Vimeo, and the Ave Maria Press website. And you will all be receiving an email tomorrow with the link to the recording as well as the promo code for the 20% off the book. Please mark your calendars for the next webinar in the Professional Development Series on Tuesday, April 30th at 3 p.m. Father Josh Whitfield will share with us how to become better listeners in the homilies that we hear. So once again, Mike, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody and have a great day. Bye-bye.